I greet you in Jesus' precious name. It's wonderful to be with you on the program. It's a beautiful summer's morning. We've got Snowy with us today. He's come to join us. We want to speak to you about shedding tears. You know, I'm sure you are the same as me. I hear a lot of sadness in the world at the moment. Everywhere you look, people are weeping. There are children crying because their parents have been killed. There are grannies and granddads crying because their children have gone to war and they've been killed. There is weeping. The cancer seems to be running rife in the world. Sickness, disease. People are weeping everywhere. Early this morning when I was preparing for this message, the Lord gave me two scriptures. The first one is Isaiah chapter 35 and verse 10. He says, "And sorrow and sighing shall flee away." Isn't that a beautiful promise? And then the other one is in Revelation, the last book in the Bible, chapter 7 and verse 17. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Now, folks, I tell you what, there are so many tears. And none of us is exempt. If you're a family man, you'll understand about tears. Our next door neighbor yesterday lost his old dad. He went home to be with the Lord, we trust, and they had the memorial service in Greytown. Wherever you look at the wars that are taking place as I talk to you now in the Middle East. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, folks. Psalm 122 verse 6. It is so necessary. We need to pray. Look what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. They don't even talk about that anymore. There's so much suffering around the world. We're talking about droughts. We're talking about floods. We're talking about storms that are unprecedented. There's a little town called Hilton, not far from us. Had a devastating, I think it was probably a hurricane, pushed over trees bigger than these trees I'm standing in front of. We are living in perilous times and people are weeping everywhere. Now this message is to encourage you that in a short while there will be no more weeping, there will be no more shedding of tears, because the Son of God is coming back and He's coming to put an end of all weeping and tears once and for all. I want to tell you a little story. When I was a young man, I used to love going up to the Drakensberg Mountains. Now the Drakensberg Mountains are about an hour and a half west of this farm, Shalom. They are mighty mountains. The top of those mountains, there are no trees that grow up there. It's too high. They are just craggy mountain tops. There are steep cliffs. There are sheer rock faces. But in those mountains, it's like another world. And I used to love going up there as a young man. When I newly got saved in 1979, some of you weren't even born then. Where's the time going? But for me, it was like yesterday. I had such a desire to serve the Lord. And one day I felt I want to go to a children's home in Durban called St. Martin's Boys' Home. And I want to go and take some of those children out and bring them to the farm for 10 days. I don't think I realized what I was letting myself into. Now, normally when you go to a children's home, because we also had our own children's home, as you know, here at Shalom, when people want to come and take the children out for an outing for a day, they always want the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, going up to 4 or 5, but the teenagers, and obviously there's reasons for that, the ones that are 16, 17, 18, getting ready to leave, they don't want them. Because those guys, a lot of them are angry, not all of them. Some of them are really upset and they've got attitudes, and quite rightly so. Why have I been abandoned? Why have I been left on? Yeah. But me, going for it, I said, I'll take all the big boys. I took about 15 or 16, not 5 or 6. I've always been like that. It's either all or nothing. I was like that when I was in the world. If we're going to have a party, let's have a proper party. And I said, I'll take them. And I took my 7.5-ton truck down there to fetch them. We loaded all of them in the back, all their sleeping bags and all their gear, and we brought them to the farm. We put up a big commando tent. I went to the local army headquarters, borrowed one of their big commando tents, and that's where we slept. I slept with them for 10 days on this farm. It was an experience in my life I will never forget. The one day we went up to the lake. We've got a big lake up at the top here, and I've never ever sailed a sailing boat in my life before. But my good friend, his name was Sparky, and they called me Scotty. But Sparky had a beautiful catamaran, and he gave me the basics, and I thought, that's easy. And he would take 5 or 6 young men out first, and then he'd come back and he said, okay, now Scotty, you go out and you take 5 or 6. And I took 5 or 6 of the boys out, but a wind got up in the middle of the lake. It was a big lake, a real wind. Now I thought the more I pulled the sail in, it would slow the boat down. But of course you know much better. I can see somebody laughing his head off. The more you pull that sail in, the faster the catamaran goes. Well, the waves were picking up as well, so we were starting to aquaplane through the air. These young guys loved it. They were saying, Scotty, go. I'm trying to stop this thing. The next thing, it went not sideways, forward, did a full somersault, and landed with the hull in the air and the mast under the water. Now I'm diving into the water, trying to stand on the bottom of the lake and get my hand and push the mast up to get the boat turned up. So it was absolutely chaotic. You know that when we eventually got back to land, the boys were all lined up. We're going with Scotty. We don't want to go with Sparky. Sparky was the sailor. He knew how to do it. Nah, we'll go with Scotty. Well, I tell you what, those 10 days I'll never forget. Another day we took them down to the thorns, what we call the thorns, the low veld. We cut walking sticks for them. Maybe some of them have still got them. These are the sticks that the Zulu people use for fighting, stick fighting. Heavy wood. You carve it nicely. You hone it down, you varnish it. It'll last forever. We did all those type of things together. Then the big one was we were going to the mighty Drakensberg Mountains. Here comes the tears. Get ready. Get your handkerchiefs out, ladies. It was so exciting. I'll say there was about 16 of us, and Sparky came with me. So together there was about 18 of us. We got in the back of that big truck. I drove the truck. It was a 7.5 ton truck. And typical, we were leaving at 3 o'clock a.m. in the morning. So we could get up to the berg by 6, get our rucksacks on, and we were heading for the mountains. We were going for a few days, by the way. Not just for an afternoon stroll. But you know, with all the excitement, you won't believe it, I left the food behind. You can't believe this. I don't know why God uses people like us, like me. But anyway, it was all part of it. So the only food we had was a little bit of dry rations. You know, these types of food that you actually have to put into the water and boil it up, and then it becomes mince or becomes like potatoes. But the real steak and all that was all left at the farm. Well, we got to the top of the bottom of that mountain. We put our rucksacks on. We got our sticks that we had carved from the bush, and we said, "Okay, boys, we are on our way." I want to say to you that that was one of the defining moments in my life. I really mean that. We set off. We had nothing. We didn't have any fancy stuff. I want to be quite honest with you, because it's called grassroots, because it's the true story. We had no covers for our backpacks for the rain, because it rains up there regularly. So I took some old plastic fertilizer bags, cut them at the bottom, the empty ones. We pushed them over the top of our rucksacks, and then we put our rucksacks on. We started walking up this path, about 20 kilometers, I would say, going pretty much uphill all the way. Started raining. We started seeing experienced mountaineers coming down, asking us, "Where are you going?" I said, we're going to the top of the mountain. They said, can't you see the weather? Have you seen the weather forecast? I said, no. Don't you know it's raining? Don't you know that you can get 4 seasons in one day in the Drakensberg Mountains? It can start off with sunshine, and then mist and drizzle and rain, and then snow. I said, yeah, I know, but we're going for it. Ignorance is bliss, they say. And of course I said, boys, do you want to go back? No way, Scotty, we're going to the top. Okay, now a lot of these young guys were already smoking. They were smokers. They were tough. A lot of them were shaving. And so I had a bunch of real cowboys with me. I can tell you something now. And so we started walking. But I want to tell you, after about an hour, the complaining started. Hey, these rucksacks are too heavy. This is too steep. I want to stop and have a smoke. I said, there's no smoking on this trip. And we kept going. Then they started arguing. Then eventually we got halfway. By that time, the sun was going down. Now we had to sit down and make a place, and it was raining. Now we had to make a place to camp. So we found like an overhang of like a cliff. We tried to get inside there. We put the pot on the fire. Now we had no meat. Where's the meat? Who brought the meat? No, it's back at home. Now the boys are hungry, very hungry. Young guys can eat lots, as your mother will tell you. Your brother never ever got full. He just got tired of eating. And I want to tell you, I had this one massive pot. I'll never forget it. And I put all this artificial mince in there, and then the guys were trying to get close to the fire. Now I'm telling them to keep back, and the next thing, a guy kicks the pot over. This is the honest truth. You talk about tears. Folks, I'm telling you a real story. Half the food is gone now. Now the boys are getting angry. They want you to fight now. Settle down, boys. I'm saying to myself, Jesus, why didn't I pick the little babies for a couple of outings? But God was dealing with them, and God was dealing with me. And maybe as I'm telling you this story, you're understanding something. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord will redeem him from them all. Psalm 34, verse 19. By this time I'm getting desperate. It's getting very cold now. The sun's down. The rain is still raining. Cold rain up there, not warm. We had a couple of spoonfuls of food each. That was it. Boys, get into those sleeping bags. They were wet by this time. And sleep. Tomorrow we're going up the pass, Grace Pass. Straight up. The pass is about this wide. On this side you've got a sheer rock face. On this side it just falls away. Looked like forever. Down to the bottom where the river runs. We started climbing that pass. I want to tell you folks, halfway up that pass, some of these boys were frozen. Not with cold, with fear. These guys came from Durban. They'd never seen a mountain in their lives before. These were the boys that were used to going down to the beach and surfing. Now the big stirrers, and there was quite a few of them, we had a couple of fights on the way. Can you believe it? Yeah, up there in that lake, one of the guys tackled me. But in those days I was still quite strong. So I came out on top with that one. But I'm telling you about real stories. Halfway up the berg, these guys started melting. They weren't the big, main, tough boys. They were now getting afraid. They say, Scotty, this is too high for us. We can't do this. I said, you can, and you must, and you will. Because we can't go back. There's no time. It's getting dark. This is the second day. We have to get to the top. Now, old Sparky, he was coming up the rear end, pushing all the stragglers. I'm in the front trying to lead them, and there's trouble going on. I want to say to you now, when you're watching this program, you have shed many tears. You have got a prodigal son who's left the home, said he'll never come back again. He never wants to see you again. Yeah. You've got a wife who's having an affair with another man and you don't know what to do about it. And you are weeping. Your boss has told you that you've got 1 month to prove yourself, otherwise you are out. You've been to the doctor. The doctor says, I don't like that lump at all. It looks cancerous. And if it is, we're going to have to operate. And the chances of your survival are slim. That's why you're weeping. Well, I want to tell you, we were halfway up this mountain with 16 young men. I was responsible for them. They didn't want to go any further. They were tired and they were scared. We couldn't go back. It's too far back to camp. And the sun's going down. You talk about shedding tears. I'm saying to the boys, keep going, man. We're going to be at the top shortly. And I told a bit of an exaggerated story, which I have since repented of. I said, there's a tea room at the top. There's no tea room at the top of that mountain. There's a tea room at the top, and they've got the most beautiful hamburgers. These blooming things are juicy, man. And milkshakes. And I tell you, if you get to the top, I'll buy you all as many as you want. Really, Scotty, is there a tea room at the top? I said, of course, man. Would I take you up to something? So they got up and they started walking. Come on now, guys. And we were praying, oh yeah, all the time. And there were tears, real tears. But God was molding us. And God is molding you through the hardship and through the suffering and through the blood and the sweat and the tears. I didn't want to be on that mountain either. I had a young wife at home with young children. I was a farmer. I had responsibilities. But my immediate responsibilities were 16 men on the side of that mountain with a path this wide, full of rocks, and a sheer drop down the one side and a sheer rock face on the other. And only one way, up. By the way, I don't particularly like heights myself. We pressed on. We pressed on. Come on, boys, you can do this. And right at the end, as you go around like a right angle, you just come up a few paces and you're on top of the mountain. Now I want to tell you, I will never forget that day. We've made it, boys. We've made it. Now they were really crying. They were crying from relief. They were crying with joy. They were crying with achievement. You must understand one thing about these boys. They had been deserted. Oh yes. Whether it was because their parents died in a car crash or because they just left them, they had massive issues in their own lives they had to deal with. One of the top ones is rejection. Nobody wants me. Nobody loves me. And everywhere they go, at school and everywhere else, you're a dropout. You'll never make it. You'll never amount to anything. That's all they got drummed into them. Not intentionally. It just happened that way. From their classmates, where's your father? Where's your mother? All that stuff. But these boys had now made it to the top of one of the highest mountains in the mighty Drakensberg range in South Africa. They were beside themselves. We made it, Scotty. Show us, where is the restaurant? Boys, there's no restaurant. You know, they couldn't care anyway. I said, but I promise you one thing. When we get back to the farm, you are going to get 2 liters of Coke each and as much meat as you can eat and ice cream and anything else. And then we sat down together and we wept together. Real tears. Tears of joy. Tears of forgiveness. Tears of understanding. And then they started to show me their hearts. You know, I get emotional just telling you the story, just like it was yesterday. These young boys are all grown up, they married, I'm sure they got families. Some of them might be watching this very program. And then they started to share and tell me what they want to be when they're big. I want to be a doctor. Well, I said, well, go for it, man. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a missionary. I want to be a farmer like you, Scotty. It was lovely, just a camaraderie. We found a cave on the top, a beautiful cave. We all slept inside the cave. And then we started to come down the next day. Now I want to tell you a little thing about being humbled, because this also brings you to tears. Now the next day we woke up in that morning, there was no food. No, I'd left the food behind, remember? We'd eaten the last food the night before. These boys came to me and they said, Scotty, we can't go down that mountain again. We are starving, man. We're feeling weak. I saw some mountaineers, professionals, the real deal. They were camped a few kilometers away from us. I said, well, you just wait here. Now remember, I was a new Christian. I'd only known the Lord a couple of months. I felt the Lord say, humble yourself, take off your hat, go and ask those men for food. I'm saying, Lord, I've never done that in my life before. I was brought up the old way. If you can't pay for it, you don't buy it. Well, no money would work up in those mountains. So I got up and I said, okay, I'm coming now. And I went over and I said, chaps, I hate to do this, but I want to tell you, I've got 16 boys here, and 2 of us, that's 18 of us, and I left the food behind. I've got no food for them, and we've got to take them down 20 kilometers down that mountain. Do you have any spare food? And they looked at each other. There's a group of them. They said, we don't have much food either, but we'll give you what we've got. And I'll never forget those Pro Vita biscuits. Pro Vita biscuits. Will I ever forget them? They gave us about 5 or 6 packets of Pro Vita. I went back and I sat down. You talk about praying over the food. I gave them a couple of Pro Vita biscuits each. They took them and held them in their hand. We did have tea and coffee. I made some coffee that was so sweet. I put about 10 teaspoons of sugar in each cup to give them some energy. Some of them had a bit of diarrhea on the way home, but that's okay. They still kept going. Folks, I'm telling you a true story here. And then we started on our way home. When we got home to this farm, we had a celebration that I will never forget. They laughed. They were soft. They were kind to each other. They were grateful to Jesus. They stood up and they made a speech that made me cry. The ringleader, the one who used to smoke and fight, he got up and he just opened his heart. He said, we've never had a week like this in our lives before. We'll never forget it. Tears of joy. Jesus says, when you get to heaven, it's like getting up to the top of that mountain. I believe he'll be waiting for you as you come up. And he'll just welcome you into his ample bosom and hug you and tell you, well done, you did it. And I think he'll take a towel from around his waist, maybe the same towel he washed the disciples' feet with on the night of the Last Supper. And he'll wipe away all that grime off your face, all those tears. There'll be no more crying, he'll tell you, in heaven. You'll never have to cry again. There'll only be joy and peace and thanksgiving. Welcome home. I want to say to you folks, keep climbing your mountain. Doesn't matter how hard it is. You'll come to the top very soon. And when you get there, you're going to see something you have never seen in your life before. I can't wait myself. Until then, God bless you. Goodbye.